with Rauno Perttu, co-founder and CEO of Provenance Gold. How are we doing today?
Great. How about you?
You know, doing well. It's been a busy day today, but we're just always, it's always an interesting time in both the cannabis and the mining industry. There's so many things going on every single day, but no, we're here now to learn a bit more about your company and who you are and what you've been doing over the last little while.
Okay. If you want to have a better background, I had retired I'm getting a lot of feedback, by the way, on this, which is a bit of a challenge. But I had retired and I was living in Baja, California, and I ran into people that were running a placer operation in the Yukon. Perfect. In discussions with them, I became very interested in the source of their placer gold. They had discovered gold in that area in the early 1970s. They had been placer mining very successfully since the mid-1980s. And I personally, several years earlier, had found a major gold system in Montana based on following up on a placer that didn't have an obvious source. So it intrigued me so much that I flew up to the Yukon in the spring and investigated the property on the ground, liked what I saw, and recognized that there were three very rich placers originating from a ridgetop and on the sides of the ridgetop in a place called Moosehorn in the western part of the Yukon. And that ridge was the source of the gold. They described to me, for example, when they were placering the rich placers, that they would reach a zone where there was shearing and low-lying, flat-lying veining in the drainage. They would cross the drainage. The gold would spike dramatically at that point and then drop off dramatically afterwards. It was obvious to me that the shearing that they were finding was one of the sources of the gold placer system. So we followed that up with trenching and geology in 2016. And we had some exceptional local results. We got a feeling for the geology. We followed that up in 2017 with a modest drilling program focused primarily on two areas and trying to understand the geologic system. What we found out about the geologic system is that it is both a mesothermal and epithermal system. So there's probably more than one gold mineralization period. We found out that the gold system is associated with both flat-lying faults, vertical faults, probably a thrust system with, I won't get into the technical detail, but anyway, it's structurally controlled, and that structural control also has a further enhancement of a broad northeast trending shear zone that cuts across the entire 6 kilometers width of the property. We also then defined where the most likely sources for the placer gold are. And I'm going to take a step back now. That a gold system that they found in the placers is probably, it's the richest placer found in the Yukon in the last several decades. They've mined personally, as they told me, over 100,000 ounces of gold from these placers. One of the placers on Canyon Creek, when a government geologist went up there and did pit sampling for 4,000 feet in the upper part of the placer, the lowest grade assay sample they found was over half an ounce per cubic yard. So it's pretty rich.
Yeah, and no reason to apologize either. It's been so interesting. The more people you speak to who really, they live and breathe exploration and mining, don't worry at all. Every single person I found who really cares about it is just like that. They'll start going into all the different specifics. And for some investors as well who want to know these specifics, it's fantastic. So not to worry there at all.
Okay. So anyway, what we also found out in our work last year was that working in the Yukon is very seasonal. It's a very short season. It's a very expensive place to work. So given that I wanted to build our company, which we are doing, I wanted to get a second project, and Nevada was the place of choice. I'm familiar with it. I have a lot of friends who are excellent geologists who have worked there their entire careers. And I decided that we needed to be more than, as the colloquium says, a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
We decided we would continue with the Yukon project, but also add a Nevada project. And to that end, by the way, I'll go back to the Yukon one more time. We didn't do much work this summer because we focused on Nevada, where we could uh, both focus on acquiring a property and do work much less expensively. Uh, at my request, the placer operators, who are the same ones who discovered that property in the 1970s and have been mining it very successfully since the 1980s, did some trenching for me. And in that trenching, where I told them to go based on the geologic knowledge that we'd gained last year, they almost immediately found two gold-bearing veins. So I think we are getting a pretty good handle on what the gold controls are in that Yukon system. Subsequent to that, uh, uh, we also have been talking to some other companies for possibly sharing the costs and expanding the property base, because when we became involved up there, shortly thereafter, we had other companies surround us with claims. One of them who we're dealing with told us, which we already knew, that the gold source is almost certainly on our claims. So
Nice.
we are probably going to do that development jointly to lower costs and to maximize chance of success. Uh, in our Nevada property situation, I uh, I met with geologists I've known for decades, and they're excellent geologists in Nevada. I told them that what our criteria were, we wanted to have a big system, a system that had a lot of upside, and a system that wasn't going to cost us an arm and a leg. I went out and looked at short lists that were developed, and I rejected almost all the properties. But in that process, I found a very few properties that appeared to be excellent. Uh, One of those properties is called Silver Bow. It's about 40 miles to the northeast of Tonopah, Nevada. It's primarily a silver property with gold credits. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
in that property, uh, what we have is a system that has been explored a few times in the past. But that exploration drilling, when I reviewed it on the ground, we actually went out and found the places where they drilled. They had drilled A, the wrong areas, and B, they had not crossed our target structures. That's partly because we have a better knowledge of what the geologic controls in Nevada are for these systems these days, and partly because of the herd mentality, where if somebody drilled in this area, let's go follow up on their drilling because they had some interesting results. Instead, we took a step back and looked at that whole system. The Silverbow system is a system that is more than 3 miles wide east-west in two major shear zones, and also more than a mile across the other direction, north-south. In that system, there are targets on the two east-west zones on their east end that have never been drilled. One of them by a geologic report done by a man 20 years ago. And by the way, I'll step back. One of the criteria that I used on this is I wanted to have properties that had been looked at in the past, at least a decade or two ago, and not been looked at again. They'd been forgotten properties.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what this one was. He came out with a report that I verified on the ground that projected that there is a zone on the south structure of these two structures that has the potential to have up to 2 million ounces of gold and 200 million ounces of silver. And that's a reasonable expectation when you look at the historic mining that happened in little mom and pop mines that were before modern technology. They ran into groundwater shallow, so they did little vertical peepholes into the main structures. The projected mining was not a great amount, maybe 10,000 ounces of gold maximum, and maybe 1 million ounces of silver maximum in that historic mining. But the average grade of production reported was about 0.05 ounce per ton gold and 35 ounces silver, which tells you it's mostly a silver target at this point.
Yeah.
What the large bulk tonnage target that this geologist postulated is an average grade of about 0.02 to 0.04 ounce per ton gold and up to 4 ounces silver. We have records from one of those old mom and pop mines on the zone that run and all the assays, the channel assays that were done underground, had gold credits up to as high as 1,500 hundredths of an ounce per ton gold, and silver assays that went ridiculously high numbers. But every sample on the floor of that mine where the water stopped them ran multiple ounces of silver. And these were all samples that were 3 to 4 feet wide minimum across the width of that old historic working. So it's a really interesting target area. It's strong alteration. It's a big system. The best parts of the system have never been drilled. The drill holes that theoretically were going to check out one of the two structures were drilled at an angle that guaranteed they would never cross the structure. They were drilled north of the structure was dipping to the south, and the drill holes were angled to the south at an angle that guaranteed no intercept. So they're wide open target. We also have recognized these days the importance of rhyolite flow dome, and I'm sorry for the technical part, but the rhyolite flow dome mineralization in Nevada gold systems, and there are clearly rhyolite flow domes that occur between the two east-west zones on this property, and it looks like the mineralization actually may wrap around these domes and also project under these domes. So that gives an even stronger upside to the property.
No, absolutely. And what's interesting as well to note, I mean, we've been speaking a few times before this, when it comes to the development where, you know, you have your land packages and you're eyeing what you want to be doing, but when it comes to the progress of where you are from beginning to, you know, that hopeful point that every exploration company hopes to get to, which is proving economies of scale and being bought out and having that turn into a mine. It's interesting because you have all these different areas that you've been looking into, but your focus hasn't been in heavy promotion. It hasn't been in all these different aspects. Your stock price actually is currently underneath where you last did your last financing, and you did a debt consolidation or a debt financing as well at 25 cents. I believe last I checked you were 18 or 19.
Yes.
It's interesting because you have all these different elements that you're looking into. You have the plan all set. Is it safe to say that next year is the year where you're going to be like, okay, we're putting this plan to action, we're going into this, and now we know what we're doing, we can't wait to get the drills into what we've been seeing and planning for?
You better believe it. Right now, we have not only a drilling program planned for both properties, and that we have targets that we've identified. We also are discussing further 2 other properties that we may add to the package if we can close the deals that will make us a solid company, hopefully with some established reserves and definitely with targets that are going to grow.
No, absolutely. And I'm excited to see that because, a lot of these different mining plays that have been coming up over the last little while, they've been fantastic companies and fantastic plays, but a lot of them have been coming to most people's attention later in the life cycle of their stock, if you want to call it that. And what we're looking for, like I'm personally looking for, is opportunities of getting into things a little bit earlier, because I don't mind waiting longer. That's my personal style. I know a lot of people like to day trade, and it comes with its thrills. But you've got to have a portion of your capital as well. We're going into something saying, okay, this is here for a while because I see potential and I see growing. And that's where you guys first came across our radar when we were looking into you, because you have these different packages, you have these different aspects, and it seems like it hasn't quite caught on yet because it's not supposed to, because the biggest plans are still to come.
Well, we actually were more in focus from the beginning on trying to establish the reality of the deposits, to show that they had big size potential and that we're going to continue to grow, to basically attract a senior partner that we could either have the option of continuing on as our own company or be taken out by a senior company. Yeah. To that end, we've actually had a couple of discussions that have been very positive. So I think we retain that philosophy that we want to not try to promote the stock right now anymore than we need to, but mostly focus on establishing the reality of these deposits and their size potential.
No, and that's good to hear. And that's where, if you are looking for longer term investments, that's where people should be looking into and doing due diligence on companies like that, because that's where you can see the downside is much less steep than the apparent upside when these things do start going well. And your ticker, it's PAU, I believe it's the TSX Venture, correct?
Mm-hmm.
The TSX Venture. You can also go onto your website as well to look into more of what you've been doing. There's a story that we're going to be following over the next little while. I just want to say I appreciate your time very much. This isn't the last that we're going to have you on the show. We'd love to continue to have you on with the progression of your company and how things are going in the next little while as you build your story and you get to that point where, like I said earlier, all the exploration companies are looking for. Prove economies of scale and prove that this was something that was worthwhile for investors and yourself as well, though.
I think right now we are poised to have a really exciting year, both because of what we're planning on doing on these properties. Also, I think the timing is good for the precious metals market right now. As you know, they've been in a bit of a slump, but I think we're going to come out of that. We also have attracted attention in Germany, which is a good place to have interest in our projects. So I think we're poised for some significant developments over the next year.
Boy, I'm excited to hear how they're going over the next little while. And like I said, this won't be the last time our viewers see you. We're sure to have you on the next little while as well. I appreciate coming on over in BC so early in the morning, and look forward to hearing more as you continue to progress.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Take care now.